Hi everybody, my name is Larsen. Comping is probably what you spend most of your time doing when you're playing in a band. And it's important for that reason, but it's also one of the best ways to develop your ability to interact with the other musicians. And this in turn can actually improve your solos vastly, because it can add this complete other dimension of you interacting with the band while you're soloing. And that makes the solo a lot more interesting to listen to. There are ways of thinking about comping that can really improve how you function in the band. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how you connect better with the band, how you think about and listen to the soloist, and also how you help using these connections to give the music and the piece of music that you're playing a musical form and make it into a story. Comping is a difficult art to teach because it's a little bit abstract, and it's also about a conversation and communication between several people in a band. But at the same time, it is a huge part of what you do as a jazz musician. And for me personally, it's a huge chunk of what I do for a living, both when I'm called as a sideman and in my own band. But I really love comping mostly because it's about interacting, it's about creating music in a conversation with other people, which is a lot of fun. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, improve the way that you solo, check out some interesting arpeggios or chord voicings, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. The unpopular opinion of the day is that when I think about how I learn comping and who I'm listening to, then I'm actually almost never listening to guitar players. I'm almost always checking out the piano players like Herbie Hancock and Wynton Kelly, because they're much better at really connecting with the rhythm section and also use this connection to take the music in different places and make it interesting and add energy and give it directions. And I almost never find that guitar players do this. In that way, guitar players can't actually comp. What do you think? Log in with the drummer. When you're the harmony instrument in a band, then it's very important that you log in with the drummer and that you're playing something that fits with what the drummer is playing. In jazz, mostly the drummer and the one playing the chords are the ones that are really interacting with the soloist, and it's also important that they don't get in each other's way. The way you want to listen and understand what a drummer is playing if you're playing a song in a medium swing is that you have a part of what is being played that is the groove part, and in a jazz groove that usually will be the hi-hat and the cymbal. And then you have a part that's used for adding accents and interaction and adding fills, and that will be the snare and the bass drum. It's important that you play rhythms that fit with what the drummer is doing. You want to be aware of what is going on, and you want to make sure that you're not playing stuff that's clashing or that you have busy ideas on top of some other busy ideas that the drummer is playing. Of course, if you listen to each other, then that's not that difficult. And it doesn't mean that you have to play exactly the same accents. You just have to watch out that you don't start clashing and that you're playing a lot of 8 notes and the drummer is playing a lot of triplets or a lot of 16 notes. The way you work on this in a band situation is that you listen to what the drummer is playing and you try to predict what is going to happen. Now that sounds like something that's very difficult, but really most drummers tend to play really logical things. They're playing musical phrases, and if it's too unpredictable, then it's not going to work behind a soloist. And of course, the same goes for your comping and your choices when you're trying to play the chords. Make musical choices, try to play riffs and rhythms that really sound like musical statements, and that makes it easier for the drummer to also be aware of and log in with what you're doing. The other way that you can improve your ability to connect with the drummer is that you try to listen to famous recordings with great duos of a drummer and, well, usually a piano player, because there are great examples of this. For me personally, I like to listen to Wynton Kelly with Jimmy Cobb and how they actually make things fit. And another great example that I also really admire is the connection you have between Herbie Hancock and Tony Williams, which it's actually pretty complicated and pretty free very often, but you can also really hear how much they do together and how they are really good at listening to each other and getting things to fit together. Listen to and don't get in the way of the soloist. So it may seem weird that I find that it's more important that you log in with the drummer than it is that you listen to the soloist, but really if you have to think about what is nice for the soloist, then I think it's more important that the rhythm section is together and not sort of getting in each other's way, so that there is something to solo on that sounds solid and makes sense as a musical whole. And then After that, you can start thinking about how you interact with the soloist. When it comes to interacting with the soloist, I think the most important thing to be aware of is not playing too much, and also to have an idea about how much interaction they actually want. It really varies from soloist to soloist how much they want you to go along with what they're doing and how much ideas they want from you. A lot of soloists will just want you to pretty much just lay down the groove and not do too much, and then you can maybe add a little bit of intensity, but you don't have to go along with the rhythmical ideas or fill up everything. And you can feel it when you're playing. You have to be aware of if when you're responding to something they're playing, if that feels comfortable. This sounds kind of vague, but it's also something that you get used to listening for. You can really hear if people are enjoying that you're giving an answer or if you're just sort of interrupting their flow. The general rule when you're playing behind somebody is that you want to play a lot when they're not playing. You have to be really careful with trying to finish the sentence for a soloist if you don't know them. And very often that's going to get you in the way of them, and that can really ruin a solo and make it really annoying for the soloist. So try and see if you can find the places and predict the places where they're not playing and see if there's room for your ideas. And then you can also in those places see if they pick up on your ideas or if you should just lay low and just lay down the groove and lay down the harmony. Extra sort of power tip that I found was really useful for me is that if you're listening to a recording of yourself improvising over a tune, then try to listen as a comper, because in that way you can also get a really strong idea about how your musical sentences are, if they have a good ending and if there is sort of a natural flow to the sentences, if there's enough room, and also how strong your rhythmical ideas are, how clear they are, and if it's something that you would actually go along with if you're comping, especially if that's what you want them to do. The reason that I can keep on publishing videos every week is that I have a community of people over on Patreon that are supporting the channel. I'm very grateful for their support, and it's because of that I can keep on making all these very specific jazz guitar videos. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page, and if you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. Giving the music form, dynamics, and variation. I think this is something that's almost never talked about, but really it is a huge part of playing, especially more modern jazz. A piece of music will develop throughout the performance of the piece, and that we don't only play the same groove the whole time, and that there's also just going to be a difference between the different soloists, and in that way we are creating more of a story and something that's going to keep on surprising the listener and keep it interesting to listen to. And I find that it's really important that you are aware of this when you're comping, that you think about like, this is the beginning of a solo, I don't have to fill up everything, and how much energy can I give, in what ways can I do that? Is it going to be just being more busy, or is it going to be about interacting with the soloist, for instance? So there are different parameters that you want to be aware of and that you want to also use consciously and try to play with, especially when it comes to playing with the drummer, because most of the time the chord instrument and the drummer are the ones that are really defining the dynamics that are happening around the soloist. To me, the true masters of this and the best example is the second Miles Davis quintet. So that's the quintet with Herbie Hancock, Tony Williams and Ron Carter, and then they're playing behind Miles, and sometimes you'll have George Coleman as a saxophone player, sometimes you'll have Wayne Shorter. And here you can really hear how they'll start in a ballad, sometimes even rubato, and then they will go to medium swing, they might go to a jazz waltz, and they'll definitely go to a medium up and maybe even further to really playing an up-tempo groove. So there are all these things happening, and that keeps the music moving, and they will try to go to places and challenge themselves as much as they can while they're playing, which makes the music much more enjoyable and much more interesting to listen to, in my opinion anyway. Now, of course, it's not so that you have to do this every time, and you will find a lot of examples that are a lot less extreme when it comes to interaction, and they're also great. And like I also mentioned, Wynton Kelly and Jimmy Cobb, there's nowhere near as much happening when they're playing, and they still play long songs and keep it interesting and really play some interesting riffs behind the soloist. So this is a question of taste, but it's something you want to be aware of, and especially if you only have like a smaller dynamic range, you want to be really careful about not giving too much energy in the beginning, because that means that later the solo might actually get boring, and that's just because the rhythm section is not being aware of where they can go and how much they need to hold back in the beginning. The things I'm talking about in this video are really about how you're aware of and interacting with the rest of the band and how you're using that in performing a piece of music. I think this is really an important topic. I also think it's something that's kind of difficult to discuss and teach, and it's not getting the attention that it should have, because this is so important for a performance. So if you have any advice on any thoughts on this, then please leave a comment on this video. If you want to check out a video where I'm talking about how to practice comping that's a lot more guitar oriented, then check out this video. And if this is the first time you see one of my videos and you want to learn more about jazz guitar, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. That's about it for this time. Thank you for watching, and until next time.